Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Dill. Saturday, late morning, you might say. Some massive news for the Penn State fans coming out of the transfer portal. Former Syracuse wide receiver Trebor Pena committing to Penn State. I love this get for a multitude of different reasons. Now, Dill, you know this because I've been talking your ear off the last couple of weeks. Like, Trebor Pena to me was the best wide receiver available in the spring portal. There were some wide receivers that were maybe a little bit more flashy, but in terms of the wide receiver that I'd want on my roster, Trebor Pena by far and away. Number two, this is a perfect fit in the Penn State wide receiver room where you look at the different skill sets that Penn State has at wide receiver. You have Kyron Hudson coming from USC. That's your bigger body, ex-boundary wide receiver that is exceptional at going up and making plays with the football in the air. Look at Devontae Ross coming from Troy. Like, to me, it's a little bit of Tez Johnson vibes, like really twitchy kid, really smooth mover, explosive with the football in his hands, which Penn State didn't have last year. Like, what wide receiver last year outside of Tyler Warren, who's a tight end, really made you hold your breath when he had the football in his hands? Devontae Ross from Troy is that kind of guy. Like, the last piece of the puzzle was, hey, who's your separator? Who's that slot wide receiver that's going to be moving the chains on those third and shorts? Trebor Pena's him. And for like a little player comp, and I love this player comp, Dale, I freaking love it. Xavier Estrepo from Miami last year. What's the step that we wanted to see Drew take in 2025? You wanted him to be a little bit more consistent. You wanted him to do the easier stuff a little bit more consistently, is probably the best way to kind of phrase that. Xavier Estrepo helped Cam Ward do it last year. I think Trebor Pena can help Drew do it in 2025. Love it for a ton of different reasons. And Dill, I'll start this episode out with a hot take here. Penn State pass catchers, better than they were in the 2024 year. Now, even some Penn State fans, some of the more optimistic Penn State fans might be looking at me and saying, this freaking idiot. I mean, we're losing Tyler Warren. How can he make that claim? Well, we'll get into it. But I think that's a realistic conversation to have because the wide receivers, I think, have the opportunity to be a massive upgrade from what Penn State was working with in 2024. Before we get into it, as always, the Penn State fans, y'all let it fly in the comments section. I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on that hot take that we're starting off the episode with. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, without further ado, I'll give you the floor. You can either talk about Trebor Pena, you can respond to the hot take that I started this thing off with. Where you want to go here?
No, and I kind of get the point of view because you still didn't really get a ton from those wideouts last year.
No, they were bad.
I think most Penn State fans, when they both hit the portal, Evans and
Harrison Wallace, Amari Evans,
pretty comfortable with that. It was like, oh, we just didn't get anything really from them. And I think the big thing is you talk about Drew doing the easier stuff more consistently. That was one issue. Is the only guy who ever gave him anything easy was Tyler Warren, because Tyler Warren could create and get himself open on his own. The wide receivers just never really did that. Like, even that Oregon game, which is probably the best football I've seen Drew Allar play in his whole college football career, he was doing like fitting balls into really tight windows, making really good throws. It wasn't like the wide receivers were open and making things happen. Trebor Pena, you kind of said it, when he gets his matchups, when he can get a one-on-one or he gets in zone coverage, he's able to make himself open relatively consistently. And that's just not been something Penn State's had.
No, really for a while. Yeah. And look, he's not the flashiest. You know, he's not a 6'5" frame that's 220 that burns down the field. Like, there's not a ton of flash to his game. I think Penn State could use a little bit more of just, hey, rudimentary, I'm really good at football, getting open, moving the chains. Dill, to kind of your point, nothing came easy for these Penn State wide receivers. It bears out with the numbers too. Like Harrison Wallace, when targeted, 58% completion percentage. Amari Evans, when targeted, 55%. Like, it was not easy getting these guys the football. You know, you look at Tyler Warren, 77% completion percentage. You look at Trebor Pena, 78% completion percentage. This is a guy that just gets open and makes things easier for the quarterback. And that's the next step. Like, if there's one thing we got from the Penn State offense is Coach K coming in, he's going to make this offense more explosive. Like, he's going to dial it up. He knows he has a good run game, can dial up some play action in the passing attack. We know Penn State can now be explosive on offense, which we haven't seen in a very long time. the next step for this Penn State offense, become a little bit more efficient. Trebor Pena helps you do that in a big way.
Especially when you have a team like Ohio State who really wants to play heavy man coverage on you. You just saw Penn State couldn't get open. They couldn't get off those corners really at all, and everything was so hard. They had to make really impressive catches if they were going to make anything happen. When you have a team that wants to go heavy man, you need a guy on your wide receiver room who can beat a man coverage.
Who else did that was Notre Dame in the college football playoffs. It's like, hey, we're going to play man coverage. We're going to double team Tyler Warren. And oftentimes double teaming Tyler Warren wasn't enough. So the ball was going to Tyler Warren. But the other wide receivers, like, they couldn't win. They couldn't win consistently. Trebor Pena is one of those guys. One other thing I'll note about Trebor Pena, red zone machine, 9 touchdowns. Like you talk about
against Ohio State. They were moving the ball pretty good. They just couldn't get open, couldn't make it happen.
And you talk about like what separates a team from, hey, we know Penn State's gonna be a very, very solid team that's probably gonna make the college football playoffs and compete for a national championship. Like that's not a crazy claim to make late April. What can you do to get yourself over the top and go make it happen? Like, you got to score touchdowns in the red zone. That's how you win big football games. Trebor Pena is going to allow you to do that at a more consistent clip in 2025. Can I just cook on this wide receiver room real quick? And again, these names are not like the super flashy names. I feel like they're kind of flying under the radar here. Look, we know the run game is going to be elite. These 3 wide receivers, I gotta switch. Devontae Ross probably going to be the Z. Kyron Hudson going to be the X. Not really sure why I have that mix and matched. Kyron Hudson was elite contested catch last year. And like USC's offense was kind of like fits and starts at times. You can ask the USC fans. Like Kyron Hudson was one, like kind of a fan favorite. And number 2, like he's a guy that you throw up some 50-50 balls and he's going to come down with those plays more times than not, which again, like outside of Tyler Warren, how much did Penn State have that? Devontae Ross. This to me is my favorite wide receiver, and Trebor Pena probably passes Devontae Ross, but I'm a massive fan of both Devontae Ross and Trebor Pena because they resemble pass catchers in the wide receiver room that Penn State didn't have last year. Like Harrison Wallace and Amari Evans were kind of just, one-trick ponies that wanted to work vertically. Devontae Ross, he had 400, almost 500 yards after the catch last year in Troy. Like this dude, similar to Tez Johnson, was like, he's not the biggest. He's a pretty slender frame, but he's impossible to tackle in space. You didn't have that last year. You didn't have a guy like Trebor Pena. And then you have Luke Reynolds, where I'm not going to say Luke Reynolds is going to have the year Tyler Warren had in the 2025 season, but Dill, we both have been following Luke Reynolds since he came out of high school. That has the opportunity, or he has the opportunity, to be one of the best tight ends in the Big Ten and in the country immediately in 2025.
And he's a huge piece of the puzzle. If like you say Penn State's pass catchers can be better than what they were in 24, Luke Reynolds again, I'm not expecting him to be Tyler Warren. You'd be lucky to get another Tyler Warren in the next 10 years. Obviously, he was a monster. But if he can be close and he can be that weapon from the tight end spot,
yes.
Then again, I do look at this wide receiver room. I think it has the chance to be quite a bit better. So Luke Reynolds, he probably is the key to this Penn State offense being, again, having what they had last year, which was a real hammer at the tight end spot, a guy they could use in play action. Hopefully Luke Reynolds can develop as a blocker to be a little bit closer to what Tyler Warren was as well. But that's going to be a big key because, again, what they were able to do off of play action and leaking Tyler Warren out using that run game was really, really effective for Penn State's offense.
On the fly, deleted JB Nelson's name. Portal guy. Get him off the depth chart. Here's probably my last take on Penn State. I got two takes to finish this thing out. Number 1, what do you notice about Penn State's depth chart, Dill? We've made depth charts for about all like the top programs across the country. What do you notice here? There's only 3 names highlighted in red, signifying transfer portal additions.
You got the offensive line Penn State has. You need to do a ton on the offense side.
TJ Shanahan should be in red. I got to clean this depth chart up, man. I'm lacking on my depth chart. You should be highlighted in red. But what I'm trying to say here, besides the point, is that Penn State is not a program that needs to go out and get 20 new names in the transfer portal because they recruit at a high enough level. But more importantly, this is one of the better player development programs and evaluation programs. Like they don't miss on a lot of their guys coming out of high school, and they get these guys, ready to rock and roll. Number 2, the positions that you see highlighted in red were that one glaring weakness that felt like it prevented Penn State from winning a national championship last year. Like, what was the thing holding them back? It was the difference makers on the outside. So now I look at this team going into 2025 and say, one, ton of continuity. You return a quarterback that's going into year 3 as a starter, going into year 2 of the Coach K scheme with better playmakers on the outside, continuity on the offensive line. I'm blindly just trusting the Penn State defense to be really damn good with one of the best DCs in the game. Like there's a
And what
lot.
I love about this offseason is it feels like they finally fully committed. And I know that
Yeah,
was we said it
agreed.
after Jim Knowles, and I'm not sure like the winter I was a little disappointed with. I thought they could have tried a little harder to get that big time name at the wideout spot. It didn't
Agreed.
feel like again weren't able to kind of close on that. This spring came around and
And they
they
did.
again, I'm kind of with you. There's one guy in this spring portal window, maybe two. I don't know. Maybe you could argue a couple others, but one guy
I
who
don't know.
clearly could be that guy and be that difference maker. And Penn State did what they had to do. And that's like when Jame Franklin was saying,
Yeah.
I finally feel like I have everything aligned in this program.
Yeah.
This wasn't the move Penn State had made enough in his tenure. They didn't do this in the past couple of years. Like, again, they have their shot. They have their quarterback. They have the best offensive line in college football for my money. The defense has been really good for a while. They only did –
Yeah.
I mean, they go out and hire Jim Knowles to make sure it's elite again. They finally did take their shots in almost every way they had to do it. Now you really set yourself up to make a real run at a college
Yeah,
football.
and to kind of finish it off, like Trebor Pena is the example of like pushing your chips. Like this kid was not. He's the best. I think he was the best wide receiver.
Because when there's that few guys in the portal
Yeah.
who can really impact big time teams like Penn State, I mean, yeah, you got to go fight with Miami, USC, whoever else.
Texas Tech was throwing their pocketbook around the table too. Yeah, like this was not a guy that just like fell into Penn State's lap. Like you had to get aggressive to land him, and that's what Penn State did.
Because you probably could have argued to an extent that was the case in the winter. Like those weren't the biggest names in the winter portal. That wasn't like what Auburn was doing or what some other programs were doing. But again, they did what they had to do in this spring, and now I think you look at the totality of what they've done. They've put themselves in a position to really take a shot at it.
Yep, 100% agree. That's all. It really is. I agree with you. Like you put yourself in a position to go compete for national championship. We'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.